You don't remember the moment you fell asleep. One evening, you simply closed your eyes beneath a tree, the way you always do after herding sheep, and the dreams came too thick and soft to push away. Since then, it's been like floating on warm mist, neither fully gone nor fully present. Somewhere above time moves forward. Seasons pass. Empires rise and fall, but you only know the slow rhythm of breathing in your sleep. Your body doesn't age. Your chest rises and falls exactly the same each night. You're young, eternally young, though you wouldn't know it unless someone told you. But no one does. Because the only person who visits you is her, the one with the silver eyes and moonlight in her hair. She arrives quietly, always at dusk. You don't see her, but you feel her, like a cool breeze brushing across your cheek, or a silence that's not quite empty. Sometimes if you stir in your dreaming, you can almost sense the edge of her fingers on your brow. She doesn't wake you. That's the one rule. The gods agreed. You sleep forever, and she gets to love you like this, still silent and safe. You never speak. You never look away. Your lips never tremble with sorrow or demand anything in return. You are the perfect lover, unmoving, unchanging, eternally hers. The moon watches you sleep every night without fail. When clouds block her light, she waits behind them. When storms roll across the sky, she still hovers above, invisible but aching. You don't know this, of course. You're dreaming of something else, perhaps the smell of sheep's wool or the memory of stars on a summer night. But her presence seeps into those dreams. Somewhere in your subconscious, you know she's there. You don't know her name anymore, but your bones do. They hum when she approaches. Sometimes she speaks quietly. She tells you things you'd once have asked. How the world is changing. How mortals have built stone cities, and how poets still write verses about you. How your name, Endymion, has become a whisper passed from lover to lover, a word to describe longing without expectation. She tells you she hates the word obsession, but even the stars seem to say it behind her back. They don't understand. They've never had to love something so still. On rare nights, she weeps. Her tears fall onto your chest, cool and light as dew. You don't flinch. You can't. She apologizes for this arrangement sometimes. She says it was the only way. If you had lived, you would have died. If you had grown old, she couldn't bear it. So she begged Zeus for mercy, not for herself, but for you. She didn't ask to keep you, just to preserve you. And the gods, ever fond of irony, gave her exactly that, your body untouched by time but unreachable in slumber. There are times when her moonlight grows dim. You don't notice, but the earth does. Flowers close early. Wolves stay quiet. Even the tides pause in their usual rhythm, as if the whole world understands she's hurting. Maybe somewhere in your dream, you feel that ache. Maybe you turn your head slightly in your sleep. Maybe that's why she keeps coming back, because somewhere you still respond just a little, enough to pretend that what you have is real. She's tried to let go. Once she stayed away for a week. It was agony. The stars blinked awkwardly. The night felt hollow. Her chariot refused to move smoothly. And you, they say, looked paler than usual. Not because you missed her. How could you? You were dreaming of sheep, or of nothing, but because her absence thinned the thread between your spirit and your shell. That thread, however, invisible, still holds you both in place. Now she doesn't try to leave. Not really. Even when the other gods mock her, even when mortals below fall in and out of love in the span of a moon cycle. She remains faithful to a boy who never woke up, who never answered back, who never held her hand. But somehow, that silence comforts her. It's better than loss, better than goodbyes, better than watching the years strip you of your beauty and your calm, better than the truth, maybe. Some say she's selfish. Others say she's tragic. But you don't say anything. You just breathe, slowly, forever. And every night when the world quiets and shadows stretch long, she leans over your face and whispers, "I'm still here." Then she touches your cheek and waits, hoping that one day maybe your eyes will flutter open and meet hers. They never do. But that never stops her. You lie beneath the same tree, as still as a painting, and she watches you again. Tonight the air is clear and the stars gather like curious children blinking down at the scene. You've moved just barely. Your arm is curled differently than last night, perhaps shifted by the wind, perhaps by nothing at all. She notices every detail, the crease in your brow, the curve of your fingers, the way your breath never quickens, never stumbles. You are quiet. You are constant, and she loves you for it. She didn't mean to fall in love, not at first. She was supposed to pass overhead, like always, a silver streak trailing across the sky. Her sisters, the hours, the days, always teased her for being the cold one, the untouchable one. But then she saw you, just once, sleeping beneath the open heavens, golden hair spread on moss, lips parted as if about to speak. And you didn't. You never did. That was the beginning. She told herself it was a passing fascination, a shepherd with a pretty face, one night sigh beneath the clouds. But the next night she looked again, and the next. And then she stopped pretending. Something in your silence made her feel safer than all Olympus. You didn't demand. You didn't flatter. You didn't fear her, didn't worship her, didn't look away. You just remained. And somehow that meant everything. She began speaking aloud to fill the quiet, not realizing she was pouring herself out like water on stone. She told you about the moon's loneliness, how even in the sky she often felt small, how her chariot pulled her from one end of the world to the other, yet no place felt like home, except here, except beside you, you. Some nights she brought you gifts, not flowers, they withered, not gold, it looked ridiculous against your brow, but feathers soft and warm from owls that flew on only at dusk. Bits of stardust she stole from falling comets. One time she left a small pearl by your ear. You didn't react. She took it back the next night, ashamed of herself for wanting your approval. Still, she returned, always. Even when storms blocked the sky, she found ways to descend. She hovered between clouds, shaping the mist so that it wouldn't soak your resting face. She hated the thought of rain startling you, even though you never stirred. And when the night grew too quiet, when even the insects held their breath, she hummed low lullabies, songs from before time, back when gods still wept without shame. Others began to notice. The stars whispered among themselves. The breeze grew heavy with knowing. Artemis raised an eyebrow. Apollo laughed cruelly, as he often does. Even Zeus gave her one of his thundering glances, the kind that said nothing but meant everything. She didn't care. What did they understand of longing, of loving something you could never truly hold? In your silence she heard everything she needed. She imagined what you might say if you could speak. Sometimes she gave you words in her head. I'm glad you're here, or don't leave yet. Other times she preferred the silence itself. It was cleaner. No misunderstandings, no quarrels, just presence, just breath. And so the nights became a ritual. She arrived, floated down, like fog, hovered near you without touching. Some nights she spoke, some nights she simply watched. Once she laughed softly, so quietly that even the trees didn't echo her. She said, "You're the only one who listens like this." And you, of course, said nothing. Her love wasn't dramatic. It didn't rage or burn. It whispered. It settled into bones. It anchored her more deeply than any palace ever had. She was a goddess who'd seen galaxies born, and yet here she was, pausing every night for a boy who never woke. She liked to think you chose not to, that your dreams were richer with her in them, that somehow your soul wandered just close enough to feel her presence. One evening, she asked you a question, just one. Do you dream of me? She waited for an answer, a sign, a twitch, a sigh, nothing. But a leaf fell from the tree above and landed gently on your collarbone. She took it as a yes. She pressed her fingers to the spot feather light and smiled. The truth, of course, is that she doesn't need your answer. Your silence is enough. It has always been enough. In a world of clamor and demands of lightning bolts and royal decrees, you are the only thing that stays exactly the same. And for her, a goddess tied to tides and change that stillness is love. So she stays, night after night, whispering, watching, waiting. She doesn't expect you to wake anymore, but she hopes in some small, wordless way that you feel her, that your silence isn't emptiness, but listening, that maybe, just maybe you love her back. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Love, they say, is a force that moves, that changes, that grows. But hers didn't, not in the usual sense. It deepened, yes, like water pooling in a cave, but it didn't bloom or fade. It simply held. And that terrified her. The idea that her love might one day outlive yours, your body, your beauty, your youth, haunted her more than any prophecy. So one night she went to Zeus. It was not a simple thing. Even gods hesitate when asking favors of Zeus. She stood before him in his clouded halls, wrapped in silver mist, her voice low but steady. She didn't ask for his approval, only his power. Grant him eternal sleep, she said, and eternal youth. Zeus looked down at her eyes, crackling with unreadable energy. He didn't laugh, he didn't mock, he just nodded. Maybe he understood in his own distant way what it meant to fear loss, so much that you'd choose absence over decay. The decree was given. From that night onward, you would never age, never wake, never fade. Your body froze in its perfect stillness, lips, slightly parted lashes, resting softly on untroubled cheeks. Time no longer touched you. The sun rose and fell, kingdoms crumbled, and you remained exactly as you were. Beautiful, breath-filled, but unreachable. She returned to you that evening, breath caught in her throat. She whispered the news into your ear, her words trembling with hope and sorrow. Now we'll never change, she said. You'll stay like this. I'll stay with you. She pressed her hand to your chest and felt the same slow rhythm, like a lullaby trapped in your ribs. It was all she wanted and everything she feared. At first it felt like triumph. Her visits took on new meaning. You weren't just a dream anymore. You were a shrine. The moonlight that spilled over you seemed brighter, sacred. She glowed with the thrill of it, knowing that time had been paused, bent for the sake of a love too quiet to announce itself. You were hers always, but immortality has sharp edges. Soon she began to notice things, not about you. You were flawless, untouched, but about herself. Her voice changed. She grew quieter, more brittle. When she laughed, it no longer echoed. The stars seemed more distant. The moonlight, once playful, now cast longer shadows. She wasn't aging, but she was changing. Love, it turned out, could stagnate, could turn stillness into ache. She began counting her visits, not aloud, but in the tilt of your hand, the curl of a petal she placed by your feet. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she'd let you live, if you'd aged, if you'd laughed, if you'd fallen out of love with her one day, chosen a mortal woman with messy hair and loud footsteps. That would have hurt, yes, but it would have been real. This was a painting hung in a gallery of stars, perfect and silent. Once she tried to step away, not leave entirely. She couldn't but to stop counting, to visit less, let time trickle around the edges. But the nights without you were unbearable. The sky felt off balance. The moon refused to rise properly, like a song missing its chorus. So she came back, always. You remained unchanged. Even your breath didn't mist in the cold. She tried to find new ways to feel close to you, braiding wild flowers into your hair, tracing your eyebrows with light. Sometimes she carved stories into the bark of the tree above you. Not myths, just little notes. I saw a fox today. I missed you this morning. It rained, but I stayed dry. You never read them. But maybe the tree did. Maybe it whispered them to you in your dreams. And those dreams, she often wondered what they held. Were you aware? Did you walk through endless fields, free and happy? Did you know she was there beside you? Or did you dream of nothing, of darkness and rest? She tried to believe the first. She told herself your silence meant peace, that deep down you were grateful, that this was better than growing old, than dying. Still, she began to speak less, not because she had nothing to say, but because words lost their shape against your stillness. It became harder to pretend, to dress up one-sided love as devotion. There were nights she wanted to scream, to shake you, beg you to wake, to hold her hand just once. But she never did. That would break the deal. Instead, she sat beside you, brushing her fingers against the grass, watching the stars drift by like indifferent gods. Her love had frozen time, yes, but it had also frozen her, trapped her in a loop of longing and hope, of watching and whispering. She had become the moon, beautiful cold, circling the same quiet world night after night. And you, Endymion, lay there, breathing gently, never knowing that your eternal slumber was the answer to a wish made in fear, a wish born from love, yes, but love that couldn't bear the thought of goodbye. She never said that part out loud. She just kept watching you, and the moon kept shining. The world around you shifts, seasons roll by, like slow, silent waves. Leaves fall, sprout, and fall again, but you don't notice. You remain curled beneath the tree, in that same peaceful pose, as if you've just drifted off for an afternoon nap. But inside, where no one can see, your mind drifts. You're not awake, not really, but you're not lost either. You live in a space just beneath consciousness where time runs thin and soft and nothing ever quite begins or ends. And in that place you sometimes speak, not with your mouth, that remains still, but in your dreams, yes, in there your voice exists. It rises like mist, fragile and half-formed. You call out names you've forgotten. You laugh at memories that never happened. You say words you don't remember learning to people who may never have been real. But sometimes, only sometimes, you speak to her. She doesn't hear you, not exactly, but she feels it like a ripple through the veil. When she's near, when her light brushes your cheek and the air grows cooler, something inside you stirs. Not much, just a flicker, a twitch in the corner of your mouth, a shift in your brow, and in your dream, a whisper. Are you still there? She is, always, though you'll never know for sure. Your dreams are strange. Some nights you run across hills that seem to stretch forever. Other nights you sit by a fire listening to music you can't quite place. Sometimes you're a child, sometimes an old man, sometimes just a breeze in the grass. But in all these versions, there's a presence just beyond the frame, a glow, a softness, the sense of someone watching, not with hunger, not with anger, just love, constant, patient, familiar. You dream of the moon, but you don't know why. You dream of silver hair and warm hands, of a voice like wind in tall grass. You think you've heard it before, maybe in another dream, maybe in a life before this one. Sometimes you try to follow it, to ask questions, but the words never reach your lips. They melt before they form. The dreams shift, and you forget, but not completely. There's always a thread, a glimmer of something true. And each night when the sky darkens and that cool breath washes over you again, the dream deepens. The light becomes sharper, the voice more real. You almost remember her name, almost reach for her hand, reach for her. But the rules don't allow it. Outside your body, she watches. Tonight she leans closer than usual. She's not sure why, but something in the air feels different. A pulse, a tremor. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's everything. She speaks your name not loudly, but with the weight of years. Endymion, it falls like a feather onto your skin. You don't move, but inside you feel it. Your breath catches for half a second. A half-dream thought floats through your mind. I know that name. You try to say it back, you really do. But in the dream, your mouth is full of stars. Your tongue is made of cloud. And by the time you gather yourself, the moment has passed. Still she noticed, just barely, a shift, a soft inhale, a pause in your rhythm. Her heart clenches. She dares to hope. Did you hear me? She whispers. You don't answer, but your dream changes. The forest becomes clearer. The moon above is no longer faceless. It looks down at you with silver eyes, and you feel safe, known, loved. She talks more that night, tells you stories she hasn't told in centuries, about the night she first saw you, about the way your silence made her feel less alone. She tells you what the stars look like from the other side of the sky. She tells you how time tastes like cold fruit and old metal. She tells you that if you could answer, she'd want to hear you say just one word: stay. In your dream you do. You say it, not with lips, not with sound, but with intention, with stillness, with breath. She feels it, and that's enough. She leans close again, kisses your forehead. The contact is brief, but it echoes in your dream like thunder. Suddenly everything is clearer. The stars brighten, the world stills, and just before the dream fades, just before morning comes, you whisper something. A single word, soft and broken and raw. Celine. Her name. She doesn't hear it. Not really. But a wind rustles through the trees above, carrying the sound of a sigh. She looks up, startled. For a moment, she swears she felt you say something. But when she turns back, you're as still as ever. She brushes your hair from your face, smiles barely. Maybe someday, she says, inside the dream you already have. Every night, like the steady rising of the tide, she comes to you. Her presence isn't loud or glowing or theatrical like the gods of Olympus would prefer. Instead, she's quiet. She arrives like moonlight slipping under a door, soft and pale, illuminating only what must be seen. Her chariot hovers just beyond the trees, silver wheels humming low as she steps barefoot into the clearing where you sleep. You've never moved from that spot, not in all the years, not through the storms or the snow or the blooming spring winds that bring swarms of buzzing insects to the edge of your breath. You lie still, perfect in your repose, as if the world has been paused around your heartbeat. And still, she returns. Celine doesn't expect you to wake anymore. She hasn't for centuries, perhaps longer. But that hasn't stopped her from hoping. Hope, she has learned, is its own kind of immortality. It's not loud. It's not even always kind. It doesn't inspire with trumpets and bright banners. It lingers a whisper in the air, a promise that maybe, just maybe, something might be different tonight. So each night, she kneels beside you, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders, brushing the moss near your cheek, and she watches, waits, listens, breathes beside you in the silence. Your face never changes. That was part of the gift, eternal youth, eternal sleep. She had thought once that this was a mercy, that by keeping you untouched by time she was preserving something fragile and beautiful in a world that devoured everything. But the years have taught her differently. Eternal things are heavy. They press into the bones. They make each moment less sharp, less real. And so now when she looks at you, there's more ache than comfort in her gaze. She speaks to you as always, not in grand declarations, not in poetry. She's long since run out of that. Now she talks like someone sharing a space with an old friend who may or may not be listening. She tells you about the owl she saw perched upside down this morning, about the human girl who tried to name a crater on the moon after her dog, about the argument she had with Artemis, who insists Celine is fading from the myths because she won't move on. She chuckles softly as she says it, but her fingers tremble when they touch your hair. You don't stir, and that is its own kind of answer. Some nights she wonders what would happen if you did, if you opened your eyes, not in love, not in longing, just in confusion, and said, "Who are you?" The thought chills her, worse than silence, worse than this stillness. Because if you've forgotten her, what has all this meant? but she brushes the thought away like smoke. She knows it isn't fair to you. You didn't choose this. You never said yes. She made that wish alone, and now she carries it alone. She has tried to stay away. She doesn't like to admit that, but there were nights, long heavy nights, when she hovered above the clouds trying not to descend. She told herself it would be better, that maybe you needed space, that maybe she did. But by dawn, her resolve always broke. The absence was worse than the ache. The sky felt crooked without her path leading to you. Even the stars blinked slower. So, she returned. She always returns. Tonight the air is colder than usual. Frost curls at the edges of the leaves. A thin layer of ice coats the surface of the stream nearby. She sits beside you, wraps her arms around her knees, and exhales slowly. Her breath fogs the space between you. She almost pretends it's yours. "Do you ever dream of me?" she asks, not for the first time. You don't answer. You never do. But she imagines that maybe your dreams are full of light. Maybe in them you're not lying still under a tree, but walking beside her in the sky, your steps weightless, your laughter ringing through the stars. Maybe you speak there in the land where memory doesn't follow rules, and maybe she understands you perfectly in that place. She likes to believe it. She tells you about her day again. This time it involves a comet that nearly collided with one of Jupiter's moons. She had tried to steer it just a little. She doesn't know if it helped. "Maybe I'm not good at much anymore," she says with a soft smile. "Except this. Except being here." She places a hand near yours. Not touching, never touching. The gods were clear. The sleep must not be disturbed. But she can feel the faint heat from your skin. That's enough. It has to be. Sometimes mortals come into the clearing. Travelers, hunters, lovers looking for somewhere private. They find you and pause struck by your stillness. A statue, a god. They whisper, afraid to get too close. Celine watches from behind a branch, invisible. She doesn't interfere usually, but once when a boy reached out with dirty fingers, she summoned a wind so sharp it knocked him flat. He didn't return. No one touched you again. Tonight she hums. It's a tune from long ago, before Olympus, before myths, before words. It rises and falls like waves. Your breath doesn't change, but she thinks your eyelids twitch, just barely. She holds the moment like a breath. But then it passes, like all the others. She leans forward, brushes a strand of your hair away from your temple. The moonlight pools in the hollow of your throat, pale and soft. She closes her eyes and whispers, "I still love you." And she does. Not the way she once did, with urgency and fire and desperate need. That kind of love burns out. No, this love is quieter, like moss, like starlight on water, like the kind of song that no one remembers learning, but everyone knows how to hum. You don't wake. But in her silence there is no resentment, only the rhythm of return, the promise of another night, another story, another touch that almost reaches you. She rises before the sun. The sky begins to brighten in streaks of gray. She looks at you one last time before leaving. For a second, just one, she allows herself to hope. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe you'll blink. Maybe your hand will move. Maybe you'll say her name, but maybe not. And that's okay. Because she will still return. Because even if you never wake, you are loved. Endlessly. Silently. Every night. You were just a man. A prince, yes, but mortal. Your skin bruised, your lungs tired, your hair thick and wild with the scent of sun and earth. You laughed easily. You chased stags with your brothers. You dipped your hands into rivers without worrying what they'd carry downstream. You knew war. You knew desire. You knew sleep after wine and salt after sweat. And then she saw you. She was the dawn, Eos, she of the rosy fingers, she who opened the sky each morning with trails of color no mortal hand could imitate. She rose from the east on her golden chariot, watched by stars that faded reluctantly. Every morning she lit the world for others. And every evening she disappeared, replaced by shadow forgotten, until the next breath of light. No one waited for her. No one worshipped her in temples. No one noticed her absence when clouds swallowed the horizon. But she noticed you. The first time she saw you, you were stretching by the edge of a field, skin gleaming with sweat and youth. You wiped your brow and squinted into the east, blinking as her light spilled across your face. You didn't know she was watching. You didn't bow. You didn't offer sacrifice or prayer. You just smiled into the morning as if it belonged to you. That was when she decided. She came again the next day, and the next, and every day after that, not with thunder or proclamations. She didn't reveal herself. She simply watched. Watched the way your fingers curled around a hilt. Watched how you tilted your face toward the breeze. Watched how you looked into the dawn with unknowing affection. And something inside her ached, not just with love, with loneliness. She was a goddess, yes, immortal, eternal. But she was also a woman tired of being first and never being remembered. The dawn always came. The dawn always left. And never once had it been asked to stay. Until you. She appeared to you one morning stepping from her chariot, like light, through silk. You blinked, unsure if you were dreaming. You asked her name. She smiled. "I am what wakes you," she said. "And you still half asleep," replied. Then never stop. That was all it took. She took you with her, not kidnapped, though the poets would later say so. No, you went willingly. You rode in her chariot, holding on as the clouds rolled beneath you. You watched the stars scatter behind her golden path. You slept in her palace at the edge of the world, where the sun never set, but never quite arrived either. You kissed her beneath ceilings, carved with ancient constellations. You made her laugh, which was rare, and for a while she forgot what she was. You were happy. She was radiant. But time has claws. You were mortal. That truth never changed, no matter how deep the ocean of her love. And while the days stretched long and sweet, your body didn't forget its nature. You didn't notice it at first. A sore knee after running through the palace garden, a few gray hairs that made her brush them away with glowing fingers. But the signs were there. Mortality is patient. It always waits. She panicked quietly. Gods, don't plead. But she did. She went to Zeus again, her voice trembling, as she asked, "Make him immortal. Let him stay." And Zeus, ever fond of half-wishes, nodded. Immortal, yes, but not young. She returned to you, triumphant, not knowing what she'd done. And at first, it felt like a blessing. You stopped aging, or so it seemed. You felt stronger. Your laughter echoed longer. The sun seemed warmer on your face. You kissed her with the confidence of someone who believed time had finally surrendered. You whispered forever, and she answered longer. But then your body began to change. Not suddenly, not all at once. A stiffness in your hands, a hesitation in your steps. Your hair thinned, your skin dried. You grew slower, heavier. She noticed. She pretended not to. She kissed your wrinkles. She sang over your aching joints. She told you that age was beautiful, that your eyes held more wisdom now. But her voice cracked when she said it. You remained alive. Your heart still beat, but your breath wheezed. Your spine curved. Your strength fled. You lived, but not well. And every morning, she rose with the sun radiant as ever and returned to you only to find you changed, diminished. And yet you smiled. You still reached for her hand. You never asked her why. Maybe you knew. Maybe you chose not to speak it. Maybe you were afraid of the answer. She tried everything. Herbs from distant lands, magic stolen from deeper gods. She even went to Hades, who only shrugged. He's not mine yet, he said. But he's not yours either. That's what broke her. Now each day she wakes the world, and each night she returns to her palace to find you smaller, frailer. Your eyes sunken, your voice thin, but alive, always alive. That's the curse. That's the gift. You never blamed her. You told her once, "I'd rather grow old beside you than die young without you." And she kissed your hand and turned her face away before you could see her cry. You never repeated it, not because you regretted it, but because even you understood that kindness can be cruel when it's trapped in eternity. Now you sit in the quietest part of the palace, a room she built just for you, filled with morning birds that never stop singing, draped in fabric the color of first light. Your body crumbles slowly, gently, and she watches. Every wrinkle is a wound she gave you without meaning to, and every breath is a reminder that love, true love, does not always come without consequence. But you are still her dawn, and she is still the first light you see. And though the world forgets you both, though no temple bears your name, she remembers. She carries your image in her chest as she pulls the sun across the sky. Because you were mortal, and she was dawn, and neither of you ever asked for more than a moment, and now you've been given forever. There are many kinds of forgetting in the world. Some are soft, like leaving behind a cup of tea that's gone cold. Some are brutal, like turning your back on someone and never returning. But the kind that haunts gods is different. It's not forgetfulness born of carelessness. It's the kind that grows out of too much love, too much fear, the kind that twists memory into wish. That's the kind that Eos knew. She loved you, that was never in question. From the moment she first saw your face, bathed in morning light, to the first time you whispered her name as if it were a prayer you didn't know how to finish, she loved you completely. And because of that, she feared the end. Eos had watched mortals fall to dust, kingdoms rise and collapse, lovers kiss and forget. She knew how thin the thread of life could be. She had no illusions, but when it came to you, she couldn't accept what she knew. Not with you, not with the way you touched her hair, or the way you marveled at each sunrise as if she were new every day. You made her feel seen, and that made her afraid. So she went to Zeus. She went with trembling voice and outstretched hands, asking the only thing she thought she needed. Let him live forever, please. Let him stay with me. And Zeus, in his way, granted her wish. That's the tragedy. She didn't ask for eternal youth. She didn't think to. Not because she was foolish, not because she didn't care, but because she forgot. Forgot that love isn't just about time. It's about how that time is spent. She thought immortality meant preservation, that by freezing your lifespan she'd freeze the version of you she adored. But she didn't account for the slow crumble of the body, the betrayal of flesh, the quiet corrosion that comes not from dying but from living too long. At first it was imperceptible. You still laughed, still ran, still kissed her shoulder when she returned each night. But then came the mornings when you didn't rise from bed so quickly. The groans in your joints, the way you held your side after climbing stairs. She noticed. She winced. But she told herself it was a phase, a storm passing through. She'd seen mortals recover before. This would be the same. But it wasn't. You began to change. Your voice, once rich with song and teasing, grew raspy. Your hands, which had once lifted her easily into your arms, began to tremble. You walked slower, slept longer. One day you asked her to describe the sunrise because your eyes couldn't catch all the colors anymore. That was when it struck her, the cruel joke, the missed line in the contract. You were immortal, yes, but not invulnerable to time's decay. She wanted to scream. She wanted to storm back to Zeus, shake Olympus to its bones, demand a reversal. But she didn't. She stayed. She held your hand. She smiled when you smiled. She pretended everything was fine. And every day, you aged, not quickly, but steadily. Time no longer ended you, It eroded you, and she could do nothing. She who painted the morning sky, who summoned warmth across oceans, could not stop your spine from bending or your teeth from loosening. Her power was useless in the face of the one thing she had forgotten, the details. She forgot to ask for youth, and it broke her. The other gods noticed. Hermes made a passing comment about your appearance. Hera scowled as if your presence offended her aesthetic. Even Apollo, arrogant as always, raised an eyebrow at how you shuffled rather than strode. But Eos said nothing. She continued to walk beside you, letting them talk, letting them look. You were hers, and she would not abandon you. But oh, how she wished she could change it. In private, she wept, not in dramatic displays, but in quiet sobs into her pillow. She cried not just for you, but for herself, for the love she had ruined with good intentions, for the image of you that still burned in her mind, strong, laughing, endless. Now you were hunched and gray, your eyes clouded but still kind. That kindness hurt the most, because you never blamed her, not once. You told her it was worth it, that even if you could do it over again, you'd choose her. Every time. That was the most unbearable thing of all. She never told you what she'd forgotten, not outright. But sometimes she'd sit at the edge of your bed, stroking your thinning hair, and whisper, "I should have known better." You never asked what she meant. Maybe you did know. Maybe you loved her too much to say it. As the years passed, she stopped hoping for reversal. She accepted what was. You would not die, but you would wither. And she would watch, because she owed you that, because she loved you still, because she'd forgotten one vital thing, and that was enough to change everything. You don't remember when the change began. Maybe it was the stiffness in your knees after a long walk through her garden. Maybe it was the morning your fingers didn't quite close around the golden goblet she handed you. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, patient, like ivy creeping up a wall. You laughed it off at first, called yourself tired, said the air felt heavier that day, but the heaviness stayed. It moved into your joints, your muscles, your voice. You never stopped loving her. You couldn't. Eos remained as radiant as ever, forever young, forever rising. Her skin shimmered like early sunlight on water. Her smile still warmed entire skies. But as you shrank into yourself, she seemed to grow farther away, not because she left you, but because you could no longer keep up. You once walked beside her. Now she slowed her pace so you could reach the next room without wheezing. Time did not kill you. That would have been a mercy. Instead, it peeled away your layers. Your hair grew thin. Your back curved. Your eyes dimmed. You still lived. You always would. But it was no longer a life. It was a long, gentle unraveling, a slow falling apart without ever reaching the ground. She tried to make it easier. She patted the walls, softened the bed, filled the room with lavender and honey to soothe your breath. When your legs failed, she carried you herself, even though it broke her to feel how light you'd become. Your body shriveled like fruit left too long in the sun, tough skin soft inside, full of memories that slipped through your fingers. You stopped speaking much. Words took effort. Thoughts blurred. You still remembered her, always her, but the world around her began to dim. You forgot the names of the birds in the garden. You forgot what season it was. Sometimes you forgot you were no longer a young prince. But then you'd catch sight of your reflection in her mirror, a small twisted figure with sunken cheeks, and it would all come rushing back. You never cursed her, not once. That's what kept her breaking. Each time she stepped into your room carrying morning dew in her hair, she'd expect to see hatred in your eyes, or fear, or even boredom. But you only looked at her with that same gentleness you had when you first touched her face in the chariot. Your love had survived the collapse of your body, and that made it hurt even more. She still told you stories about the sky, about mortals and their ever-changing cities, about the new myths the poets wrote, none of which mentioned you. She tried to make you laugh. Sometimes you did a faint wheeze that passed for joy. Other times you simply blinked slowly, as if that was all you could manage. It was enough. She told herself it was enough. You stopped walking. Then you stopped sitting. Then, one day, you stopped sleeping in the bed and curled up instead in a corner of the room, rocking gently, humming tuneless sounds that may once have been lullabies. Eos sat beside you, brushing your hair, pretending this was fine, that this was still love, that this was still you. And it was. But it wasn't. Immortality did not preserve you. It stretched you, thinned you, turned you into something that once was a man, but now resembled a memory held together by breath. You never stopped breathing. That was the cruelest part. Your chest rose and fell. Your heart kept its rhythm, but everything else began to fail. Sight, speech, hunger, desire, all gone slowly, quietly. She begged the gods to fix it, to undo what had been done, but they all refused. You asked for him to live forever, they said, and he does. There was no loophole, no cure, no pity, just rules. You had become a god's mistake, an eternal whisper, a prayer without form. Eventually, she stopped showing you the sunrises. She used to carry you to the highest balcony, let you feel the warmth on your face. But one day, you flinched. You shrank from the light. Your skin had become too thin, too brittle. The light burned instead of blessed. So she kept you in shade wrapped in silk, hidden from the very thing that once brought you joy. Still, she stayed. Because what else could she do? You had become part of her, not in the glorious way the bards write about, not as a statue or a star, but as something quieter, a thread knotted deep in her chest, a reminder that even gods forget things, that even love can go too far. She fed you by hand now, droplets of honey, bits of fruit, crushed soft. You chewed slowly with great effort. Sometimes you forgot to swallow. She never scolded you. She just held your face in her hands, and waited, patient, broken, devoted. You spoke only once that year. Your voice came out like the wind, brushing dry leaves. You said her name, just that, Eos. She didn't breathe for a full minute. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. You smiled, or tried to. Your mouth twitched. It was enough. That was the last time she heard your voice. Now you hum, or mutter, or blink. You still breathe. You still exist. But not like before. Not like anything else. You are immortal. You are aging. You are fading, and yet never ending. And she watches, because she loves you, because she cannot undo what she forgot, because this is the shape of forever when it's asked for in fear instead of wisdom. And still somehow you love her back. Your fingers once wove through hers like water, strong, sure, warm. You used to hold her hand as you walked the halls of her palace, laughing at some joke she barely understood. You used to grip her wrist when you pulled her into dance, used to cup her cheek with a thumb pressed gently to the corner of her mouth, just to feel her smile widen. Your touch had weight, heat, intention. It was part of how she knew you were real. But now your fingers don't close. They tremble, curled slightly inward, like petals that no longer bloom. They twitch sometimes, as if remembering how it felt to reach. But they do not rise. They do not grasp. You can't hold her hand anymore. And she doesn't ask you to. She holds yours instead. Each day, each evening, each silent space between dusk and nightfall, she sits beside your crumpled form and laces her fingers around yours, even though your grip is gone. She squeezes gently. Sometimes she imagines that you respond, that there's a faint pulse of effort, a twitch of knowing. But she never lies to herself for long. You are still breathing, still blinking, still existing. But the man who once carried her across the sky now sleeps in open-eyed silence, trapped in a body that continues without purpose. She misses your hands, not just the feel of them, but the language they spoke. How you'd lift a finger to signal a question. How your knuckles tapped the table when you disagreed. How your hands would cradle her foot after long flights, pressing against the arch with slow care. They were hands that knew how to touch gently, without fear, how to speak in gestures when words weren't enough. Now they lie in your lap like artifacts, precious, unreachable. She still remembers the last time you reached for her. It wasn't dramatic. No music swelled, no lightning cracked. You were sitting on the balcony wrapped in furs, watching the clouds shift. She had said something simple about the smell of the sea, and you turned your head slowly and raised your hand. It didn't lift high, just enough to brush the edge of her sleeve. She caught it quickly, held it tight, kissed the bones beneath your skin. You smiled. You didn't speak. And then your arm fell back down, heavy as stone. That was the last moment of movement. Now, when she visits, she speaks softly, not expecting answers. She describes the sunrise she painted that morning, bands of pale coral, soft lilac gold, like crushed glass. She tells you about the mortal girl who wrote poems about your love, not knowing the whole truth. She tells you how the garden has changed, how the birds have grown quieter, how the marble steps crack beneath her bare feet. She tells you everything, because silence is louder when it isn't shared. Your hands don't react, but she touches them anyway, rubs small circles into your palm, counts the ridges in your knuckles. She used to fear breaking you with too much pressure. Now she fears forgetting how you used to feel. She wonders sometimes if you still dream, if the inside of your mind is still lit with memories, if you still walk beside her in that world, if your dream self still lifts her hand and brings it to your lips like you did 1,000 mornings ago. Maybe. She hopes so. It's easier than imagining that you are only waiting. Others ask her why she doesn't let go, why she doesn't release you from this strange unlife. But they don't understand. She can't undo the wish. She can't speak death into existence. You are beyond the reach of both time and end. And so she does what she can. She stays. She touches. She speaks. And every night before she leaves, she presses her cheek to your shoulder and whispers, "I still feel you here." Even if you can't feel her back, even if your hands once so full of stories and songs now lie still as fallen leaves. She keeps holding them, because even without the squeeze, the warmth that returned this too is love. There comes a moment quiet, almost invisible, when the body stops being a home and becomes only a shell, not because it has died, but because it can no longer hold the soul in the way it once did. You were not dead. You could not die. But you were no longer fully there either. The skin remained. The breath still whispered in and out. But the part of you that once laughed, once sang, once stood tall in the morning wind, that part was gone. What remained was something else. A voice. It did not come from your mouth. That had long since fallen silent. Your lips no longer moved, your throat no longer shaped sound. But still, somehow, a voice lingered. In the air. In the space Eos breathed each time she entered your chamber. In the curve of your empty hands. In the worn grooves of the marble where your fingers used to rest. You had become a voice without a body. Not a ghost. Not an echo. Something quieter. Sadder. More persistent. That morning, Eos arrived before the first light. The stars were still blinking out. The wind had not yet risen. She stepped into the room where you sat still small, hunched beneath folds of silk and wool. Your eyes were open, as always, staring at a point beyond the wall. But something was different. The air felt lighter, as if a weight had lifted. She knew before she touched you. Not that you were gone. You couldn't be. But that something had changed. She sat beside you, reached for your hand. It didn't twitch, hadn't in years, But this time, even your skin felt distant, like touching the surface of water rather than flesh. She whispered your name. No answer. She leaned close, pressed her forehead to your temple, and then she heard it. A sound, not with her ears, but inside. A hum, a memory, a wordless sigh that passed through her like breath through a reed. It wasn't a word exactly, but it was you. A tone she'd heard 1,000 times, a warmth she hadn't felt in ages. You had become a voice. From that day forward, you no longer blinked, no longer shifted in your seat, no longer needed warmth or food or even presence. You sat like a statue, but something in the space remained alive. Travelers who passed near the edge of the garden said they heard music soft, distant like a lullaby through glass. The servants spoke in whispers when they dusted your chamber, claiming the air itself seemed to murmur when they approached. Eos knew better. It was you, not in the way she had known you. No, that man, the one who kissed her wrists and teased her about cloud shapes, that man was gone. But this version of you lingered, not alive, not dead, but present, lingering in the folds of time like sunlight trapped beneath a leaf. She stopped speaking aloud. She didn't need to. Instead, she listened. She sat for hours, eyes closed, palms resting on the floor beside you. The voice never grew louder, never said words, but it pulsed soft and even, like the beat of wings underwater. It soothed her. It made her weep. You were no longer her lover. Not truly. But you were hers still, and she was still yours. When others asked what had happened to the once beautiful prince, she said nothing. Let them wonder. Let them invent endings. Some claimed you had faded to dust. Others whispered you had ascended to Olympus, made divine at last. But none of that was true. You hadn't moved in years. And yet your voice reached farther than ever before. She stopped aging too. Not because of a wish, but because something inside her froze the day your hands stopped trying to hold hers. She went through the motions, painted the sky each morning, kissed the edge of the horizon. But her heart never fully left your chamber. She kept you company. She told no one about the voice. It was hers alone. And maybe, in your own way, you heard her still. Maybe the voice that remained wasn't a remnant of you, but a message looping endlessly from the version of you that had once promised, I will never leave you. And you didn't. You stayed, not as a man, not as a body, but as a voice in the light, as a hum beneath her breath, as the sound of something eternal trying gently forever to say goodbye. When you first washed ashore, you didn't know your name. Salt stung your eyes, sand clung to your lashes, and your limbs trembled with exhaustion. The wreckage of your ship scattered behind you like the bones of a creature long dead. You were nothing but breath and bruises. a body emptied of past and purpose. You fell to your knees, then you collapsed. The waves pulled back as if satisfied with what they had returned to the land. She found you there, Calypso, daughter of the sea, keeper of the island Ogygia, where time folds and frays and forgets to move forward. She lived in a cave of silver and moss vines hanging from its mouth, like curtains, the smell of citrus and honey always in the air. She was not like the other immortals. She did not command storms, or hurl fire, or ask mortals to sing songs in her name. She simply waited, not by choice, but by punishment. She saw your body half buried in kelp and foam, and something stirred in her chest. A memory, a longing, not for rescue but for a companion. A voice, a face, a heartbeat that wasn't her own. So she knelt beside you, pressed her ear to your chest, heard the ocean still murmuring inside you. She carried you into her cave, cleaned the wounds, fed you broth from a cracked shell, laid you on furs she hadn't used in a decade. And when you woke, blinking, coughing, trying to remember where the sky ended, she smiled. "You're safe," she said. You didn't answer. Not right away. The sea had stolen your voice for a time. But when you finally spoke, it wasn't her name you said. It was another's. Penelope. She flinched, not visibly, but inside. She had known somehow that your story was not blank, that your heart was not hers to fill. But hearing the name made it real. You were not meant to stay. Still, she smiled. Still, she offered you fruit and fire and a bed of fragrant moss. Still, she let herself hope. Days passed, then weeks, then longer. You wandered the island, still weak, but healing. She walked beside you, showing you the trees that bore golden apples, the springs that sang as they flowed, the stars that hovered closer to the island than they did anywhere else. You listened. You even laughed once. That was the moment she let her guard drop. She kissed you the next day. You didn't stop her, but you didn't pull her closer either. And she knew. Still you stayed. Because the island was warm. Because the nights were gentle. Because you didn't yet know how to leave. But every time you looked toward the east, she saw it. The flicker in your gaze. The map your mind traced across the water. You weren't counting the days you'd been here. You were counting the ones you'd been away. You were never cruel. You were kind. You ate what she made. You complimented her songs. You carved small boats out of driftwood and set them adrift, not realizing how much it hurt her to watch them go. You spoke of Ithaca, of your son, of your wife who waited. And when you did, your eyes softened in ways they never did when you looked at Calypso. She should have sent you away. She didn't. Because even a borrowed love feels like love when you've been alone long enough. She sees it in your shoulders. First, the tension when you wake each morning and realize again that this island is not Ithaca, that the smell of the sea here is not the same as the salt wind over your cliffs, that the birds call differently, that the light is too soft. She watches as you roll your shoulders and sigh, not with suffering, but with longing, a longing not for her. So she offers you everything. She begins with comfort, feathered beds, warm baths, bread baked with herbs from her garden. She plats flowers into your hair and calls you beautiful. She sings while you eat. She sings while you sleep. She combs your beard with a shell comb and says nothing when you whisper your wife's name in dreams. Then she offers you pleasure, the kind only immortals can give. Her fingers trace stars into your spine. Her lips draw silence from your mouth. She presses her skin against yours and makes the nights feel endless. And for a while you let her. You touch her in return. You murmur gratitude, but your hands never tighten. Your breath never catches in wonder. You are present, but not possessed. She offers you power next. Stay, she says, and you will never die. She tells you of the gift she can give eternity, a life without pain, without gray hair, without the slow folding in of time. You will remain strong, golden, desired. You will never weep again, never bleed, never feel the slow ache of joints in the morning. You will be as the gods are, she says. You will be worshipped, if only by her. You ask if Penelope will be immortal too. She doesn't answer. She offers you peace then. No more war, no more storms, no more thundering waves, or cursed seas or gods with cruel games. Here there is only green, only warmth, only her. You can walk barefoot forever. You can sleep without nightmares. You can drink the juice of pomegranates and never feel guilt. She offers you a future without pain, but not without forgetting. You know what she's asking, not in words. She never says the part aloud, but it's there, humming under each offer. If you stay, you must let go of the ship, the oars, the vows, the thread that ties you to a woman who may no longer be waiting. You must let the sea close behind you. You must choose the island. Choose her. You thank her. You do not say yes. She pretends you have. She builds a boat anyway, just in case. She never shows it to you. Some days you seem close to agreeing. You walk the island with a softer pace. You kiss her cheek without her asking. You rest your head in her lap and close your eyes. She lets herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe your roots are starting to dig into the island's soil, that maybe, just maybe, she will not be left behind again. But then the clouds break, and you look east, and she knows the truth all over again. So she tries a new offer. She brings you a stone, smooth, heavy, shaped by years of tide. Hold it, she says. Throw it into the water. If it sinks without sound, it means the world beyond is gone. If it splashes, it means it's still calling. You throw it. It splashes. She smiles, but she does not meet your eyes. That night she doesn't touch you. She sits at the mouth of her cave and watches the sea, wondering what more she can give. What else she has. She has no armies, no thrones, no temples, just fruit and song and the ache of waiting. She decides to give you the thing she dreads most. Freedom. You smile when she brings you fruit in the morning, ripe figs, warm from the sun. You smile when she hums while arranging your cloak. You smile when she jokes about your scruffy beard and says even immortals appreciate grooming. You smile when she sings, even when the melody reminds you of something else, something far away, something from a time when your world was a little colder, but more your own. But none of your smiles reach your eyes. She sees it. Calypso watches your mouth move, curving gently with practiced ease, but your gaze remains distant, not blank, not unkind, but always pointed elsewhere. It isn't that you don't enjoy her company. You do. It's pleasant here. The food is sweet. The nights are soft. Her hands are warm, but the smile you give her is the kind a soldier gives a stranger after returning from war, polite, grateful, but haunted. You smile like someone who knows how to be charming, even when their mind is elsewhere. At first, she tries not to notice. She tells herself it's just habit. That men who lose everything at sea need time. That maybe all smiles look a little fractured when built over wreckage. She reminds herself that you never flinch from her, that you rest your head on her shoulder without being asked, that you sometimes whisper stories in your sleep, stories she can't understand, but that make her feel like part of your dreams. But then the pattern becomes clear. Every time you smile, you do it as a way of avoiding silence. You use it to fill space, to keep her from asking questions. And she lets you, until one day you forget. She gives you a carved shell, one she found near the cliff's edge, polished by time and tide. She says it reminded her of your voice. You take it, turn it over in your hand and say, Penelope would have loved this, and you don't smile. You look at the shell with a softness that makes her breath catch, a softness she hasn't seen directed at her since you arrived, a softness that's reserved for someone who's not here. That night, she doesn't sing. You ask if something's wrong. She says, nothing, and you smile, a quick flicker of lips, a mask. She says nothing more. But that's when she understands. You've been surviving, not living. You've been grateful, not devoted. You've been present in body, but not in soul. Your smile has been an offering, a shield, a kindness. But it has never been surrender. And love, she knows, requires surrender. She once believed that time would wear down your resistance, that enough kindness could build a new home in your heart. But time on this island bends in strange ways. It does not heal you. It preserves you. It traps you between what you lost and what you refuse to replace. and she cannot change that. So now when you smile, she smiles too, but only in return, no longer in hope, no longer as a thread she pulls to tie you closer, just a shared habit, a silent agreement. You pretend not to see the sadness in her eyes. She pretends not to notice that your gaze always follows the birds flying east. But the island knows. The trees lean differently when you pass. The waves murmur your wife's name when you sleep. The wind brings dreams that don't belong to this place. You smile, but not fully. And in the quiet between breaths, Calypso finally stops pretending that it's enough. There is a kind of quiet that comes after a storm, a hush made of relief and ruin. But this is not that kind of quiet. The silence that begins to fall over Ogygia is slower, stranger, heavier. It begins with the birds. They stop singing at dawn, not all at once, not abruptly, just less. A missing note here, a shorter call there. One morning you notice the branches are still even when the breeze moves through them. You ask if something is wrong. Calypso says no, but her voice doesn't rise like it used to. The garden fades next. The flowers still bloom, but without urgency. The colors are less vivid. The vines curl inward sooner. The scent of citrus lingers in the air longer than it should, like perfume clinging to an empty room. You walk the same paths you always did, but your feet don't sink as deeply into the moss. The ground feels less eager to hold you. Calypso stops singing. You don't notice the first day. Then you do. You ask her why. She shrugs, says she's just tired. But she doesn't look tired. She looks distant, like a painting beginning to fade beneath too much sun. She still brings you fruit, still weaves small gifts into your cloak. But her hands move slower. Her eyes don't lift to meet yours as quickly. She hums sometimes, but not songs, just half-remembered sounds. The island mirrors her. Ogygia has always been alive, not loud, not bustling, but alive in its own gentle rhythm. The waterfalls murmured, the trees whispered, the sand warmed underfoot. But now everything seems to wait. The air holds its breath. The light takes longer to stretch across the cliffs. Even the waves have grown hesitant, as if afraid to wash something away that hasn't yet broken loose. One evening you find her standing at the edge of the sea. She doesn't turn when you approach. You ask what she's looking at. She says nothing, but her voice cracks on the word. You stand beside her, hands folded behind your back, and the silence grows between you like an unopened letter. You want to say something. You don't know what. You want to comfort her. You don't know how. You think of Penelope. You don't say her name. That night, Calypso does not come to your bed. She remains outside the cave. You find her curled beneath a fig tree, arms wrapped around her knees. Her hair, usually braided with care, falls loose down her back. You offer to carry her inside. She shakes her head. "I'm fine," she says. You nod, but the word stays with you. Fine. It rings false in your chest. The next morning, the sun rises late. You feel it. You always feel it. The light is a little weaker, the warmth delayed. You walk to the eastern cliff and find Calypso there, again, arms outstretched, as if trying to coax the day into being. You hear her whisper, "Just a little longer." You don't ask what she means, but deep down, you know. She's letting go. Not because she stopped loving you, but because she loves you too much to keep pretending. The island feels it too. The vines no longer reach for her fingertips. The water in the spring no longer glows before she arrives. The animals keep their distance, not out of fear, but respect. A goddess in mourning changes the air around her. And mourning doesn't always follow death. Sometimes it follows silence. You begin to wake earlier. You begin to walk farther. You begin to speak less. Not because you feel cold toward her, but because part of you is already gone, and part of her knows it. The island grows quiet, and with every passing day it begins to sound more and more like goodbye. It happens on a morning that feels no different from any other. The sky is pale, the sea is calm. The breeze carries the scent of lemon and salt, just like always. But something in the air is waiting. It presses gently against your back as you wake, like a hand urging you forward. You sit up slowly. Calypso is already gone from the bed. You find her by the boat. You didn't know she'd finished it. You hadn't seen her working on it. But there it is, sleek, narrow, curved like a crescent moon resting on the sand, as if it had always been waiting. The sail is rolled tight, the ropes coiled neatly. There are no decorations, no farewell offerings, just wood and cloth and wind. She's standing beside it, hands at her sides. She doesn't look at you. You don't speak yet. You walk to her slowly, your footprints filling with morning light. She says it's ready. You nod. She says you should go today. You don't ask why today. You know. The wind is right. The tide is rising. And her silence has grown too large to fit between the walls of the cave. You take a breath, but it doesn't feel like enough. You try to find words, to thank her, to apologize, to explain that your heart never stopped beating for another shore, even while your body stayed on this one. But she lifts her hand and shakes her head. Don't, she says, and you don't. Instead, you step toward the boat. Your hand brushes the smooth edge of the hull. It's solid, real. The first real thing you've touched in a long time that didn't ask you to forget something else. She hands you a satchel, food, water, maybe a blanket. You don't open it. You feel the weight of her preparation in it. The care, the grief, the quiet love that stitched it shut. You say, "Thank you." She nods. You say, "I'm sorry." Her lips press into a line, and for a moment you think she won't respond. Then softly, "I know." You step into the boat. The sand shifts beneath it. She walks to the edge and gives one final push, her fingers pressing against the wood for just a moment longer than necessary. And then the boat slides free. The sea takes you. She does not wave. You do not look back, not because you don't care, but because you know that if you do, you might stay. And staying would be the cruelest thing of all. So you face forward. The island begins to shrink behind you. You hear nothing but wind and water and the groan of the wood beneath your feet. You wonder what she's doing now. You picture her walking back into the cave, lying down on the empty bed, listening to the silence she chose, the silence she created. Because love sometimes means building the very thing that will carry someone away from you and letting them go anyway. You sail on. The sun climbs higher. You don't know how long it will take, but you don't know what waits for you at the other end. You only know that she let you go and that she never asked you to promise anything in return. Not to write, not to return, not even to remember. But you will. You always will. The island fades. The wind rises. And for the first time in a long time, you feel free, but not unburdened, never unburdened, because some love does not leave scars. It leaves silence and sails, and an island behind you that never sings again. You are a hunter. That is all you've ever known, not the kind who kills for gold or glory, but the kind who listens to the wind and knows which branch will break before it does. You speak little. You move quickly. The animals do not fear you. The trees do not hide their secrets from you. In the wild you are whole. You've never feared gods. You've met some, dined with a few, fought beside one or two in ancient battles you no longer care to remember. But most of your life has been lived in silence, beneath trees older than kingdoms, under stars no one else seems to notice. Then she finds you. You don't hear her approach. She steps between shafts of moonlight pale as winter, quieter than the deer you'd just released back into the woods. She is not dressed in gold or thunder. She wears gray. Her eyes are sharp. Her bow is unstrung. And she watches you like someone trying to remember. You don't ask her name. You know it. Everyone does. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, protector of the wild, forever alone. She says nothing at first, just walks beside you, matches your stride, steps over the same roots, avoids the same patches of damp moss. You don't speak either. Something about her presence makes words feel unnecessary or maybe too sharp. It becomes habit. You hunt together. Not as partners, not yet, but not as strangers. You track the same boar for 4 days across broken ground. She never offers advice. You never question her pace. On the 5th day, the boar vanishes into mist. She shrugs. You both laugh. It's the first time you hear her voice, low, dry, amused. It lodges in your ribs and echoes. She disappears that night. You wake to find her gone. No trail, no scent, just absence. You tell yourself not to care, but you watch the moon a little longer that night, and the next, and the next. She returns on the third, carries nothing but a rabbit slung over her shoulder. You pretend not to notice the way your chest relaxes. She pretends not to notice the tension in your hands when she passes too close. There's no word for what grows between you. It is not courtship, not friendship. It is something wilder, made of stares held too long and silences filled with breath. You never touch, but your shadows brush sometimes, and that feels like enough. You know her rules. She's made them clear to others. Never love, never marry, never bow. But rules have a way of bending beneath moonlight, especially when two hunters move through the same forest and begin to match each other's rhythm without meaning to. You don't ask for her affection, but you notice how she steps closer each day, how she begins to speak more about the stars, about her brother, about the wolf she once followed for 3 nights and still dreams about. You listen. You never interrupt. She tells you that's why she stays, because you do not try to hold her, because you do not try to change her. You smile, and she looks away quickly. The gods begin to whisper. They always do. But for now, the forest is still yours and hers, and that fragile thing between you that feels almost like love, but not quite. Not yet. You begin to notice the way the forest changes when she walks beside you. Birds quiet down, not in fear, but in reverence. The wind softens. Even the old trees lean ever so slightly in her direction, as if they recognize something in her stride that you're still trying to name. You never question it. You've seen gods before. You've seen what they do to the world around them. But Artemis is different. Her power isn't loud. It doesn't demand. It surrounds. Still, things are shifting. You wake one morning and realize you've begun dreaming of her. Not grand dreams, no fire or stars or divine proclamations, just quiet ones. Her laughter in a clearing, the way she pushes her hair back when the wind gets in her eyes, the brush of her shoulder as she leans closer to see the track of a deer. You wake with her name in your mouth and no idea how it got there. You don't tell her, but she knows. One night, as you build a fire beneath the leaning rock that keeps off the wind, she sits closer than usual. You can feel the heat from her knees through your cloak. She doesn't speak for a long time. Then she says softly, "They're starting to watch." You ask who. She doesn't answer. But you know, the gods, the mortals, her brother, the world, none of them are ready. They whisper, of course, they always do, a goddess walking side by side with a man, a virgin huntress laughing too long at a mortal story, a boy who does not kneel, a woman who does not leave. It makes them nervous. You can feel it in the way the stars blink more slowly now, as if hesitating to light your path, in the way the air thickens when you walk too close to a temple, in the way your arrows now fly truer than ever before, but land heavier. She begins to withdraw. Not suddenly, not cruelly. She still hunts with you, still shares her food, still touches your shoulder when she laughs. But her eyes no longer stay on yours for too long. Her fingers no longer brush yours when she passes the water flask. You feel the cold long before she speaks it aloud. "I can't stay," she says one morning. You nod. But she sees the clench in your jaw, and it breaks her a little. "This was never supposed to happen," she says. "You don't ask what this is. You know, you were never supposed to matter, not to her, not like this." The world is not ready for a goddess who chooses presence over worship, nor for a man who dares to love her without needing to own her. And so, the world pushes back, harder than before. The forest grows restless. The animals scatter sooner. The wind brings warnings, now words hidden in the rustling leaves. Your name is spoken in Olympus with curled lips and narrowed eyes. They call it arrogance. They call it a threat. You call it nothing, because you don't care what they think. But Artemis does, because she knows the cost. You sit beside her one evening watching the sun disappear beyond the trees. You don't touch her, but your silence speaks enough. She closes her eyes and whispers, "I wish things were different." And for the first time you allow yourself to say it out loud, "So do I." The words hover between you like breath on cold air. Then they're gone. Like everything else, the world refuses to allow. The sea is calm the day it happens. You've wandered to the shore for no particular reason. The forest had grown tight with warning, and the air behind you felt thick with something unsaid. So you followed instinct as you always have, and stepped toward the water. You wade out a little, just enough to feel the pull of the tide around your ankles. The sky is cloudless. The salt is sharp in your throat. It should have been a peaceful moment. She is not with you today. You assume she's tracking game or speaking with her brother, or perhaps hiding in one of the cool caves behind the hills where even the gods feel safe from questions. You are not worried. She always returns. You do not know that this time it is different. Somewhere high above Apollo stands beside his sister. His voice is sweet, smooth as honey, but behind his words is a thrum of bitterness. He gestures toward the horizon, where you stand like a dark speck in the blue. "See that figure out there," he says. "Do you know who it is?" Artemis squints. The sun is too bright. The figure is too small. She shakes her head. "It's a man," Apollo says, "a sailor, boasting that he can outrun any arrow. Says even you couldn't hit him." She frowns. Her pride, long buried beneath her calm exterior, stirs. "Is that so?" Apollo smiles just a flicker. "Prove him wrong," he says. She doesn't question it. Why would she? It's a challenge, a test, a chance to remind the world that she is still Artemis, huntress, unmatched. She lifts her bow. Her fingers are steady, her eyes sharp. She draws back the string and lets the arrow fly. You don't see it coming. You hear a sound, soft high, like a bird whistling. Then something pierces your side. You stagger. Look down. Red blooms across your ribs. The sea rises to meet you. You fall. The water catches you gently. You float. Above, Artemis waits for her brother to cheer. But he says nothing. Instead, he turns and begins to walk away. She feels the unease. Too late. Her heartbeat shifts. She runs to the edge of the cliff, eyes scanning the waves, and she sees you, face down, blood curling into the sea like smoke, and the world freezes. She screams. It is not a sound anyone has heard before. It shakes the trees, startles the stars. Even the sea stills. She leaps. Her feet barely touch the earth as she descends. She runs to the shore. She calls your name. Again and again and again she reaches your body, pulls you from the water, cradles your head in her lap. Your skin is cold, your lips are blue. She tries to heal you, her hands glow. She pours everything into you, every divine thread she can summon. But it's too late, because the arrow was hers, and you were mortal, and the gods do not undo their own endings. She realizes too late what has happened, realizes the trick, realizes the truth, realizes what she has lost, and what she cannot bring back. She does not remember standing. One moment, her knees are in the sea, soaked with salt and silence, and the next, she is carrying you. Your weight is not what she expected. You were always solid, always warm, full of breath and laughter and strength. But now your limbs hang loosely. Your head lolls against her shoulder. You are quiet in the wrong way, not sleeping, not at peace, just still. She holds you tighter than she ever dared to when you were alive. She presses her cheek to yours and whispers your name, but it slips into the wind without echo. The sea doesn't speak. The sky holds its breath. She walks without knowing where she's going. The forest yields to her. The trees bend. The earth hardens under her feet so she doesn't stumble. The animals hide. Nothing interrupts her. Not the breeze, not the gods, especially not the gods. The cliff is steep. She climbs it anyway, 1 foot, then the next. Her arms tremble, not from fatigue. She doesn't tire, not like you did. Her trembling comes from somewhere else, from inside, from a place beneath bone and beyond logic, from the part of her that thought she had buried that need, the part of her that once dared to love. At the top, she lays you down gently on the stone. The same stone where you once sat beside her to watch the moon rise. The same stone where she realized weeks ago that you were no longer just a companion, that something had changed. She kneels beside you. Your face is still. She touches your cheek. It's already cooling. She brushes the sand from your lashes, the water from your lips. She presses her hand to your chest, just to be sure. There's nothing, not even an echo. She bows her head, and the silence thickens. The stars above blink slowly, dimly. They are watching. She knows this. The entire sky is watching. She doesn't cry, not yet. Instead, she begins to speak, not loudly, just enough for the sky to hear. He wasn't supposed to matter. Her voice cracks, but she continues. I wasn't supposed to let him. She closes her eyes. The wind stirs her hair. She breathes it in, but it tastes like endings. He never tried to hold me, she says. He never asked me to be anything I wasn't. She looks up at the sky. But you couldn't stand that, could you? The wind stiffens. The stars shift. Somewhere, far above, a constellation flickers. I loved him, she says. There, she said it. No riddles, no silence, no games. She loved you, and she never got to say it when it would have mattered. She turns back to you. Her fingers hover over your heart, the place where it used to beat, the place she should have protected. She thinks of all the things she never said, the mornings she could have held your hand, the nights she could have let her guard down. She thinks of the first time she laughed at one of your terrible jokes, how surprised she was at the sound of her own voice. She thinks of how you looked at her, not like a goddess, not like a prize, but like a person, like someone you wanted to know, not possess, just be near. She thinks of the arrow, the moment she let it fly, the pride in her chest, the betrayal in her brother's silence, and the second just one, when she saw your body in the water and understood everything. She presses her forehead to yours. I'm sorry, she whispers. I didn't know it was you. She says it again and again, until the stars pulse softly above, the sky stirs, the wind lifts your hair gently as if to comfort her, and something ancient shifts. The stars move, not all of them, just a few, just enough to form a shape. She watches it take form. A figure, tall, bow drawn, eyes forward, a hunter, her hunter. Your stars settle into place, but it's not perfect. The curve of your back is too stiff, the angle of your arm a little too heroic. But it's you, it's always been you. Her breath catches, and for the first time she cries. She doesn't wail, she doesn't sob. She just lets the tears fall, silent and steady. Her shoulders shake. Her hands clutch her cloak, and the night does not move. The stars keep watch. The moon dips low, almost close enough to touch. She stays with you all night. And when dawn begins to stretch across the sky, she stands. She looks at the constellation once more, and then she speaks the vow that no god can undo. I'll find you there, she says, in every night sky, in every pause between steps, in every moment the wind stops just long enough to feel like your breath. She turns and walks away. She does not look back. She does not need to, because you are above her now, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as a light, a fixed point, a promise. And from that day on, she never returns to the cliff, because the sky is all that's left, and the sky is enough. She never speaks your name again, not because she forgets, not because it hurts too much, but because the sky says it for her now. Every night, when the world falls quiet, she looks up, and there you are, steady silver, sharp as ever. A hunter carved in light. Not flesh, not voice, but memory frozen into myth. Artemis keeps walking. She returns to the forests. She hunts. She sings sometimes, but not the songs she once shared with you. Those are tucked away now, buried somewhere between the curve of your jaw and the sound of your footsteps on pine needles. She never steps near that cliff again, not because she is afraid, but because she has already said goodbye. The gods whisper. They always do. Some say it was fate. Some say it was a lesson, a warning, a punishment. But she does not listen. She no longer cares for their stories. They are not hers. She carries her own myth, now quiet and private and shaped like regret. You shine above her each night. You do not speak. You do not blink. But you are there, always in the same place, always watching. She tells herself it's enough, that this is what she chose, that this distance, this silence, this cold thread of connection between earth and sky is better than losing you completely. But some nights, when the clouds are thick and your light disappears behind them, she falters, she pauses, she clenches her jaw, and in that space between breaths, between moments, she allows herself one single traitorous thought. What if I had loved him out loud? She never lets the thought linger. She presses it down like a wound that never heals, but must not bleed. She has made her choice. She has upheld her vow. She is the goddess of the hunt, untamed, untouched, unclaimed. And you, mortal, beautiful, brave, were never meant to stay. Yet the stars do not follow rules. They watch. They remember. And they keep you close. The mortals name your constellation Orion. They tell stories about your strength, your speed, your love for the wild. Some say you chased the Pleiades. Others say you angered the gods. But Artemis knows the truth, and that truth is not loud. It is not carved into marble or sung in temples. It exists only in the way she breathes your name into the cold wind at dawn, only in the way she pauses before loosing an arrow, remembering the feel of the one that struck you down. She never takes another companion. None of the gods dare ask why. None of them mention your name. But when mortals gather around fires and trace your stars in the sky, their children point and say, "Who is that walking behind him?" They see a second figure, faint, just out of reach, a shadow of light. It's her. Even the sky won't let her go. She is not beside you, not quite, but always near. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest ending of all, to be remembered forever, but never touched again.